one of the reasons why I love this moment is because everybody's sitting wondering who's going to be speaking. And this was a tradition that was started many decades ago, where we invite 4 secret congregants to share a little bit about how Judaism has impacted their lives. Now, as Jews, I've always been surprised that it mostly remains a secret until Yom Kippur. You know, there was a moment when I was driving on a tour in Israel. We're going to the south, and our guide says, "Oh, you see the rock ledge over there? That's where the secret missile base is." And you're like, nothing. I don't know if you should have told us that. Okay, I think we have critical mass now. Before I call up our speakers, I want to thank Marvin Zexer for doing this. You took over from Harvey Hauptman many years ago, and this was one of his prides and joys of doing. And I'm glad that we've found a suitable successor, and it is yours until you say I'm done, and then I still have another 5 years. Just putting that out there. So here's the moment where we find out who's speaking. I want to call up our interim speakers. First, I want to thank our first speaker to come on up, because he is not only speaking today, but he's also simultaneously recording the event, as he did last year. I'd like to call up one of our board members, Jonathan Moran. Another one of our board members, Barbara Bender. Judge Dan Brown. And Yasmin Fisher. I now hand this over to you, Marvin. I hope you all enjoy this program, and I want to assure you all that we are not starting the afternoon service until Marvin tells me we're done. So there's no need to feel like you need to get out of here before any of the speakers are done. Shana Tova. Marvin, bavakasha.
Thank you so much. Shana Tova, everyone, and welcome to this year's interim program. In the interest of making sure we give everyone a chance to speak, time, I think, is on our side, but nevertheless, the format will be as it's been in past years. I'll allow each of our speakers to speak. We'll take questions and answers at the end. That way we'll know how much time we have. I will add a personal note. I'm flattered, honored by Rabbi Baisley and Rabbi Miller before him to ask me to do this. It is a pleasure. It is one of the things I truly do enjoy. And I will say to the speakers, I sat in your seat, oh gosh, 7, 8 years ago. I found it one of the most wonderful things I could do. I thought it was a tremendous opportunity. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I present you Jonathan Moran as our first speaker.
Shana Tova. My name is Jonathan Moran, and it is an honor to be able to speak here today. Judaism has always been a profound aspect of who I am. While its role at times has changed depending on the circumstances, it has unquestionably defined who I am as a husband, as a son, as a brother, and as a father. Judaism is not just my faith, it is far more than that. It's my cultural heritage. It is the embodiment of my family's traditions that have been passed down through the generations. Traditions that Michelle and I now pass down to our sons, and hopefully one day they will pass down to theirs. It has also been the road to my place in the world, to finding my way to a community of people who share not only my religious beliefs and not only my traditions, but also a shared sentiment about our role in the world around us, the sense that it's not just enough to be good, but to do good as well. I grew up in Arden Heights, Staten Island, right over the Outer Bridge crossing. My family moved to Arden Heights after a swastika was drawn in our car by neighborhood children in our prior home. I was 5 years old when that happened, and I will never forget it. The children who did it were the children of our neighbors, our supposed friends. It was widely known who had committed the act, but the community was, to put it mildly, indifferent. Although my family had lived there for several years, we were still outsiders in this predominantly Italian Catholic neighborhood, and no one seemed to think it was so wrong. Arden Heights offered something different: a burgeoning Jewish community and a relatively new synagogue, a conservative temple right around the corner from our new home. The synagogue, for the first 13 years of my life, became a sort of social hub for my family. My family, along with other families with young children, attended Friday night services every week. The synagogue was our place to gather, talk about the events of the past week, make plans for the days to come, and to celebrate our Jewish religion and culture. I think of those years, 13 years, quite fondly. In my 13th year, my relationship with Judaism changed. That year, as I prepared for my bar mitzvah, dutifully listening to my Torah portion on a tape cassette, I can tell I'm not the only one in the room, I found myself confronted with a looming tragedy. My grandmother, who had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of colon cancer, was in a battle for her life. While she struggled to survive, my family endured economic hardship because of job loss and the death of my great-grandmother after a fall. I prayed as hard as a 13-year-old could for my grandmother to survive. She lived to see my bar mitzvah, still gets me, but died 4 months later. I was left shattered, sad, and angry in a way that I had never felt before. I was angry that my prayers for her recovery and survival had gone unanswered. It was thus that 4 short months after my bar mitzvah that I had a deep and overpowering crisis of faith. Although my attendance at synagogue stopped, I could not forsake my Jewish identity. Observing the high holidays with my now considerably smaller family still held great importance to me. I also repeatedly found myself drawn to other Jews. When I attended Rutgers College, I was stunned at how many other Jews there were. I was very used to being a minority, with my traditions and beliefs seeming foreign to most. Suddenly, I was living in a vibrant community where there were many people who shared my beliefs, shared my traditions, and shared my sentiments. It was at Rutgers that I joined a predominantly Jewish fraternity, ZBT, in case you're wondering. It was in this fraternity that I met people and made friendships that have lasted my lifetime. Some of those friendships are friendships of congregants who are in this congregation today. This was also not your typical frat house. The fraternity had a strong commitment to philanthropic endeavors and was a founding organization of the Rutgers Dance Marathon that raises money for cancer research each and every year. Rutgers is also the place where I met my wife, Michelle. Michelle grew up Roman Catholic, and although religion was a concern for us both, our bond and love for one another was undeniable. Prior to our relationship, we had many conversations about our expectations with regard to faith and family. It was agreed that we would raise our children as Jews, but we would also celebrate and recognize her religion. Although she and I found balance in our relationship, we quickly learned that the road to being accepted as an interfaith couple would not always be that smooth or that easy. Indeed, after our engagement, we began looking for a synagogue to join. The criteria for the right match was not exhaustive. We simply wanted a temple that would accept an interfaith couple and a rabbi who would marry us. It's really 2 boxes. It didn't seem like too much to ask for. That's what I wrote here. We found a temple not far from our former home and gave it a try. The temple, which shall remain nameless, boasted about the number of interfaith couples and families within its membership and its acceptance of those couples. However, when Michelle and I asked the rabbi to marry us, the answer was a resounding no. We were devastated at this rejection. Luckily, we found Rabbi Alfred Landsberg of Temple Emmanuel. He met with us and performed a beautiful and moving ceremony. Not long after we were married, David and Brandon came along, but we still had not found our Jewish home. Suddenly, for reasons I foggy about, we had a little extra time on our hands in 2020. We decided, lots. We decided that it was time to find a synagogue that was the right fit. We remembered this place our friends Kevin and Andrea Lynn went to in New Brunswick. We had been there in 2018 for a Hanukkah lighting event and thought it was wonderful. After a few virtual meetings and inquiries, we knew right away that Anshe Emeth was the place where we would feel welcome, accepted, and where we wanted our children to go on their own Jewish journey. Next year, David will have his bar mitzvah. As we approach that momentous occasion, I am struck by the fact that, in many ways, my life has come full circle. Anshe Emeth, like my hometown synagogue before it, is my family's hub of social and religious activity. While most of the action happens on Saturday mornings rather than Friday nights, the sense of community, common cause, and common purpose has returned. To conclude, Judaism is not merely my religion, it is not merely my culture. Judaism is the foundation of my identity as a person in this world, trying to do good things, while also trying to be a good husband, a good son, a good brother, and a good father. Shana Tova.
You know, it's kind of fitting that today is Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, because, Jonathan, I have to atone for an oversight. I can't call it a sin. All of you were kind enough to give me a small bio. Jonathan, I failed to read yours before you spoke.
I assume my reputation preceded me.
It does. It does. But I'm going to read it now anyway, because I have it, and I want everyone to know who you are, and then we'll continue. Jonathan Moran and his wife, Michelle, currently live in East Brunswick with their two sons, David and Brandon. Jonathan is a New York-based trial attorney representing severely injured construction workers hurt at unsafe work sites, many of whom are undocumented individuals. Talk about tzedakah. Jonathan and his family joined Anshe Emeth in the spring of 2020, and although the entirety of the first year was spent getting to know the community virtually, it was quickly apparent this would become their spiritual home. Saturday mornings are always a family affair, with Michelle and Jonathan regularly joining the lively discussions in map class, while David and Brandon attend religious school. Recently, Jonathan became a member of the Anshe Emeth Board of Trustees and has taken on the additional role co-chairing the Tikkun Olam Committee. Now, great bio. Tell us about yourself. Thank you again. Our next speaker is Barbara Bender. Dr. Barbara Bender is a Senior Associate Dean of the School of Graduate Studies and founding director of the Teaching Assistant Project and the Rutgers Academy for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning at Rutgers University. Dr. Bender earned her doctorate at Teachers College, Columbia University, and has taught a wide variety of classes in higher education, including courses on college teaching, ethics, and building leadership skills for PhD students. She has served as a member of numerous accreditation teams for the Middle States Commission on Higher Education and participated in the United States Marine Corps Officer Candidate Leadership Program for educators at Quantico, Virginia. She served as editor of the Journal of the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators for 9 years and currently serves as a member of Anshe Emeth's Board of Trustees. I offer you Barbara Bender.
My publicist. Thank you. Judaism has influenced my life by providing a framework that informs and guides the myriad decisions that I make throughout the year, both personally and professionally. When I was first asked to comment on how Judaism has influenced me, I thought of a bicycle wheel with Judaism in the center and the spokes coming from the center of the wheel representing various teachings and expectations. I thought of one spoke as the many decisions I've had to make about dietary laws and all the no thank yous related to food choices. A second spoke involved the many conferences and professional opportunities I've declined because the events were scheduled on a Jewish holiday. But thinking with greater focus, I realized that these sorts of issues were just pragmatic matters that could be easily accommodated with practice. So thinking more critically, beyond the pragmatic surface level, rather than the bicycle wheel and its spokes, I consider the framework of Judaism more reflective of a compass, a very special and complex directional signal that provides me with a consistent norm for the nature of my interactions with the multiple communities in which I live and learn. The first relationship to this compass is the Jewish calendar and the direction it provides throughout the year. The Shabbat may be considered the North Star of the compass, serving as the weekly focus of Judaic life that provides a structured opportunity to consider the past week. During Shabbat, we take a brief break from our daily routine and then consider the agenda for the week to come, hoping the next week will bring better days. The calendar compass, of course, provides direction as it expands and guides us to the many holidays that we celebrate throughout the year. We move through points of the compass and the direction that it provides, observing traditions and marking the passage of time as we plan for all aspects of the holidays and their rituals that inform our lives. In this cycle, through Judaism, I've been guided on how to manage the events of life, both joyous and sad, and informed by the values and practices of Judaism as I proceed through the challenges of life that we all face. Now, beyond the compass of the calendar, I interpret my Judaism as a commitment to a moral compass that informs and sometimes even dictates decision-making, with the north of the moral compass pointing to a commitment to equity and ethical decision-making as a primary goal. The moral compass, the moral integrity, and the teachings of Judaism make a difference, especially when we consider our roles in society. Think about it. Have you ever said to yourself, I don't want to do this, but I must do this. It's the right thing to do. This is the basis of Jewish teaching that especially influences our life choices, striving to do the right thing. I believe that fully living a Jewish life is a responsibility. It is a responsibility to be committed as a community to repair the world, and to do so with compassion, kindness, and civility. Kindness, of course, takes many forms, from the simple act of holding the door for someone, to making a donation, to an affirmative act of inclusion, one that we embrace throughout the year at our holiday tables and at services and congregational activities. In the Jewish tradition, we engage and embrace active inclusion of diverse peoples, opening our doors not just at the Seder, but to friends and even strangers throughout the year, so they too can share and learn with us as we continue to study our traditions and their origins. Through Judaism, I believe that acts of kindness can also be interpreted as respect. Respect for other traditions, respect for people who are different from ourselves, and becoming educated about those differences. The truth is, however, being kind and being civil is not always easy, especially when those around us do not share the same values. I often think about this commitment to kindness and civility and how to balance that with what I'm feeling when I observe the behaviors of leaders across our local, national, and global communities, and their lack of kindness and civility when interacting with each other, while supposedly representing us. Our Jewish heritage demands that we learn throughout our lifetimes to further our commitment to striving to follow the North Star of the moral compass and make decisions that are ethical and fair. With that moral compass as an underpinning, we can embrace life with compassion for others and the enthusiasm to make a difference. We do this while acknowledging that such a commitment is not always easy, but it's the right thing to do. Wishing all of us a wonderful 5784, I look forward to working with you as we attempt to live our lives in a manner that'll make a positive difference.
Dan Brown. Dan, along with his wife Allison and their two daughters, Sarah and Jessie, have been members of Anshe Emeth since 2014. Dan was born and raised in East Brunswick. The Brown family continues to reside in East Brunswick. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce Dan Brown.
So when Rabbi Baisley told us to submit a brief biographical piece, I think I took him a little too literally on the brief part compared to my fellow panelists, but be that as it may. I have an inferiority complex. So, Shana Tova. I remembered, Sarah. How has Judaism influenced my life? So when Rabbi Baisley asked me to speak on this topic, my wife Allison and my two daughters, who I'm already embarrassing, Sarah and Jessie, they started grinning from ear to ear. Because Rabbi Baisley said this was a secret of who the speakers were, he's not joking. I literally did not tell my mother I was speaking on this topic until this morning. And I said, Mom, I'm speaking on how Judaism has influenced my life. And her candid response was, why? Followed up by, why would Rabbi Baisley ask you to speak on this topic? And I'm not joking. I love her. But why did I get these responses from my family? Because in the interest of complete transparency, from time to time, Allison will say to me on a Friday night, let's go to services tonight. And in candor, sometimes my response to her has been, really? And it's an exasperated really. Because I'm saying to her, I'm exhausted. It's been a long week. I want to put on my sweatshirt, my sweatpants, and sit on the couch. And the reality is, again, do we ultimately come to services? Yes. But I recognize, and I know all of you recognize, in the world we live in, we're always running around, we're all exhausted, we're all working hard. And I think my response to Allison in that regard is pretty normal. But more to the point, it certainly doesn't mean that Judaism is not important to me, and it doesn't mean that Judaism has not influenced my life. To the contrary, Judaism has absolutely influenced my life. And I'm not just saying that because we're here on the Day of Atonement. The reality that I'm trying to really get across is that Judaism clearly influences us all in different ways. First and foremost, Judaism has instilled in me a greater sense of family. Judaism is a reason to come together with your loved ones on the Jewish holidays, to engage in Jewish customs and traditions, to engage in conversation, to let multiple generations enjoy and interact with other generations, and to learn from other generations. And of course, what makes those Jewish holidays even more special to me, they normally involve a very good meal. Another hallmark of Judaism. And why did I personally make sure that I married somebody who was Jewish? Because I wanted to know that I had a partner who was as committed as I was to raising our beautiful daughters in the Jewish faith and in continuing these Jewish customs and traditions with them. Judaism has also instilled in me a greater sense of community and togetherness. And I promise you I'm not going to now go into another public service announcement promoting Anshe Emeth. But I'm going to confess, when we were deciding what synagogue our family was going to join, Anshe Emeth just screamed community and togetherness. And that's what Judaism is all about. To me, the synagogue exemplifies and personifies Judaism, and it's made me want to embrace Judaism. A large part of that sense of community and togetherness is as a result of the way that our daughters have been treated here from day one. In some, they're treated like family. They are doted upon by everybody in this temple. The temple has been beyond giving to them, and it's caused them to want to give back to the temple. The culture here at Anshe Emeth is one of community and togetherness, and it just begs you to want to be a part of it. and in turn to embrace Judaism. There's always an abundance of activities going on here which serve as a vehicle to bring us all together. There's never any pressure to do any given one of them. You pick and choose what interests you. And every time you go to one of those activities, you're with a bunch of people. They may act a little different. They may look a little different. They may have different jobs than you, different interests than you, different family dynamics than you, but there's one common unbreakable thread that brings us all together. We're all Jews, and that bond is something of incredible significance and importance. So Judaism, Anti-Semitic style, as I refer to it, it's influenced me by causing me to want to be a part and an active part of my synagogue. Here, the culture is always an inviting one where you can embrace Judaism in ways that go well beyond just prayer service after prayer service. Here, Judaism means having a safe place where, as a result of everyone having the same religious background, there's a sense of commonality and camaraderie. I ask all of you rhetorically, how often do you come across somebody here at Anti-Semitic where you don't feel comfortable interacting with them or approaching them? And the answer is probably not ever. If you're in a map class together, you all have something in common. If you're sitting together at a family Shabbat dinner, you all have something in common. If you're cooking with Team B'Tevon, you all have something in common. I've personally had the opportunity to cook with Team B'Tevon on multiple occasions. And I can tell you that that cooking team is actually very emblematic of how Anti-Semitic instills a sense of togetherness with no barriers. My eldest daughter, Sarah, who I'm embarrassing now mightily, she's 17 years old. She's cooked in that team for years. And what does she get a big kick out of? Working with the older members, some of whom are in their 80s. Whether it's temple members, temple employees, and even clergy, Judaism in these walls means warmth and unconditional acceptance. There are no pretenses, there are no egos. I recall vividly Rabbi Baisley walking around the synagogue on Purim many years ago, dressed as Willy Wonka, handing out candy to children and adults like me who act like a child. I still remember the mini gobstopper, Sarah. I've personally felt comfortable enough with our cantor to tell him at a bar mitzvah that we were attending together that I can imagine the day where he's doing that thing with the Kiddush cup in the palm of his hand. And some kid is going to act up, and there's going to be Manischewitz everywhere. I hope I'm not in his immediate proximity when that happens, but my point to you is that Judaism, the Anti-Semitic way, means unconditional acceptance and comfort being with those who share the same faith, irrespective of whether you're someone who's at each and every religious service or somewhere in between. That acceptance and comfort ensures that coming to synagogue and being exposed to Judaism is not a chore, but rather something fun and enjoyable, and a tradition that I can only hope that our children pay forward to their children. Thank you.
Our final speaker, Yasmin Fisher. Born in Jamaica, the West Indies, immigrated to London, the UK at age 7 with 4 brothers. Parents were already there with a younger infant brother born in London, went to elementary school through undergraduate education in the UK, came to the States for graduate work in the Midwest. Upon graduation, came to New Jersey and has been there ever since. Became a member of Anshe Emeth in 1994 upon conversion, but had been attending since 1990. Ladies and gentlemen, Yasmin Fisher.
I thought I gave the shortest bio. Thought I did. Okay, well, Shana Tova, everyone. Awesome and wonderful to see so many friends and smiling faces here. So you have a little bit about my background, but let me just fill in a little bit. So all of this makes a little bit more sense. I grew up in the UK, as Marvin said, and that's where most of my family now resides. My parents, in their infinite wisdom, I only say this in hindsight. I didn't see it when I was growing up. Emigrated there from Jamaica, and then they brought the children once they'd saved enough, because there were quite a lot of us. And the way I heard it was my mother said, they all come together or none come until we've saved enough money for all of them to come. We weren't that well off. So, as Marvin said, the sixth child was born and waiting for us. And of course, he had no expectations of what his siblings would be like. I think he was 3 months old when we got there. And we are now the generation that went to the UK at that time were called the Windrush generation, for the historians in the room. And I have no idea what it means. And we were never called that. We were just plain old immigrants. Fast forward, I went to elementary school, high school, and university in the UK. And then I came here for graduate work. And I'm fast forwarding because I have to get to how Judaism has influenced my life. So bear with me. Fast forward, after several years, 2 small children, and much water, a lot of it murky sometimes, under the bridge, I met someone who was Jewish. Surprise, surprise. So my introduction to Judaism, and when I say Judaism, the kind of Judaism that we feel here, that we see here, that we live here, came at Anshe Emeth, in this very place. And it came by way of Cantor Coopersmith, Lee Coopersmith. Nod your heads. I see many of you remember her. Yes. And then Rabbi Miller, my mentor over there, Rabbi Paskoff, who was the assistant Paskoff. And then after Rabbi Paskoff, Rabbi Dubois, if I think I have the right order, came in. So this is my first introduction, all of these people, things, to Judaism. So after a few months of dating, I was invited to attend Shabbat service. I actually had no idea what Shabbat service was. Been to church, been to friends, religious ceremonies, but Shabbat, what the heck was that? Anyway, I thought it was just another date, but with religious overtones. I really did. Going on a date, but you're going to a temple. I mean, I was really up for it. I was so excited, and it was an opportunity for me to learn something new. Well, the experience actually blew me away. It really did. If you think of a temple experience blowing you away, that's what actually happened to me. We were a little late, and that's my MO, not my partner's. I take full responsibility for that. But before we even got into the sanctuary, I heard a most beautiful voice. And that was saying something, because you know what? I'd heard some pretty awesome gospel singers, gone to gospel concerts, spiritual renditions, and just heard some pretty good singers that would make you want to jump out of your seats with just the beauty and the clarity and just the awesomeness of their voices. To be clear, when I heard the sound from the synagogue, I'm a spiritual person, but I never considered myself overly religious. My mother was a devout Christian, tried as she would. She couldn't get us to go to more than Sunday school, and that was about the extent of it. Like I said, the voice I later learned was Cantor Lee Coopersmith, who I believe was also a convert. Beautiful, beautiful voice. I still remember it to this day. Any event, after attending more services, meeting Rabbi Miller, I told Rabbi Miller, don't go anywhere, you're in my talk today, because he's such a big... I gave him an order. I did. And after meeting Rabbi Miller, Rabbi Paskov, other congregants, much like the gathering here, and learning more, I signed up for an Introduction to Judaism class. I told you I'm very adventurous. I went through the whole Megillah. I did, went through the whole Megillah. I did everything. Everything they asked me to do, I did it. And then I converted and I became a Jew. And I stand here before you today, a Jew who's proud to be a Jew whose Judaism influences the way I think, the way I look at life, and the way I've raised my family. So when I converted, it was really idealistic. It really was. You know, so when Rabbi Baisley asked me to speak, I immediately said yes, because when you become a Jew, everything is a yes when it comes to Judaism. There is nothing that's a no. Of course, Rabbi Baisley. Why wouldn't I say? And then after some thought, I said to myself, why were you so quick? And then I thought, you know what, go back to that conversion speech you wrote many years ago. See what you said when you made that promise, that commitment to live a Jewish life. And yes, I converted, went to the mikveh. Rabbi Miller, again, was there when I stood on the bima and I gave my speech. And it was idealistic because I was giddy with Judaism. I mean, I thought this was the nirvana. I'd reached everything. This was the guide that was going to help me to navigate my way through life, the difficult world of partnering, of parenting. I had 2 small children, and community. We talked about community. Without community, Judaism doesn't mean anything. It truly doesn't. Not for me anyway. But I'd just like to share a couple texts taken as I wrote them on the day that I converted. The first one I said was Cantor Cooper Smith. So here we go. And I've not changed a word of it. Secondly, I remember the Shabbat candles glowing, flickering, bringing such a sense of calm and peacefulness. Thirdly, the Ner Tamid, which at the time I thought was just a fancy red ball, just a part of the overall decor. I had no idea about the significance or the power of this symbol, but my first memory of it became very special once I knew what it meant. My fourth recollection, now remember, I'm reading what I wrote when I converted. My fourth recollection, and the one that impacted me the most, was the recitation of Kaddish. I don't recall those who stood, but with every syllable uttered, I shared their sorrow, their anxieties, also the hope and renewal, which I later learnt was the essence of this prayer. So moved was I that I found it very difficult to keep the tears away. It evoked in me very powerful images of my mother. When it was over, I felt that everyone had said Kaddish for her too. And I was amazed that words which I did not understand could move me in such a way. I still get emotional when I read about that. Fast forward, living Jewishly. That's what I think about when I think about Judaism. And I don't know if I'm always actively conscious of being a Jew every day of my life, any more that I'm conscious that I need to pray for those who are sick, troubled, marginalized, homeless, etc., etc. The list is endless. But because of my Judaism, I am somehow conscious that those are important aspects of my life and that they must be given space and voice in my daily life. That the mundane and the routine should give way to prayer and action. Talked about action. Not only do you think about the things, but to do them is even more important. And in some small way, it helps me to fulfill the promise to live Jewishly. I do see the world differently, but then I think I always have. I think my immigrant Caribbean culture and the upbringing against a very British backdrop gave me a unique perspective, lens through which to see the world. Yet, that wasn't enough. I think my encounter with Judaism forced me to see the same things differently. And Judaism made things less black and white, and there was absolutely no pun intended there. There was no pun. I've always considered myself very liberal, forward-thinking, and progressive in many ways. My rabbis, Rabbi Miller in particular, I don't know how many times I have you in here, but you're in here a lot. Rabbi Miller in particular, Paskoff, other rabbis, and yes, I'm going to mention this in this group of Reform people, congregants, rabbis. There have been some Chabad rabbis that have led me to think about things differently. I have to make a little segue. My father-in-law of blessed memory was actually educated in the Chabad tradition, even though he never practiced in the Chabad tradition. But all of those influences allowed me to think of my role in this world as something more meaningful. For example, talking about and doing tzedakah, giving as a way of fulfilling a mitzvah, and more importantly for me, because it makes a difference somewhere to someone. We talked about all the activities that the temple does. Doesn't do it for the sake of doing it, even though we're commanded as Jews to do these things. But when we do them, we need to think about the impact that they're making, the difference. You know, we talk about making a difference in people's lives. What we do makes a difference. And as Jews, we consciously work hard to make a difference in people's lives. As a Jew, I think more about giving of myself, of my time, and of my love, my care and my concern. And I'd say because of Judaism, I definitely am more conscious of that. And to some degree, I see it as being obligated to do it, even though we don't have to, but we're commanded to. But yes, do it because it makes a difference as well. We talk about community. I can't stop talking about community because my Jewish community is uber important to me. Affiliating with Jews, as you talked about, coming here, your daughters, the things they learn to do, it's so important. I think that Rabbi Miller mentioned it, and Rabbi Baisley talked about it on Rosh Hashanah. Jews without community are not Jews. We're people wandering around. And we've done that for a long time, many moons ago, I understand. But affiliating with Jews to feel connected, to be accessible to other Jews, is a way that also makes for a caring and a welcoming community. And I can't say how many times we've talked about Anshe Emeth as warm and welcoming. It's a place where you feel comfortable, where I felt comfortable from the very first day I came here. For me, temple attendance You know, when your wife says, let's go to Shabbat services, and you're like, really? Well, I've had those reallys, and my husband will tell you that, yes, he said, let's go. And I said, really? I have said that, full disclosure, but it's less paramount for me now. But I don't feel any less Jewish because of it. I have to tell you, though, that I always feel rejuvenated, refreshed after coming, even if it's just to drop something off or pick something up. This place that we call Anshe Emet, place of truth, Rabbi Miller, thank you. It's a very sacred space to me. I have a lot of history here. My conversion, I got married here. My baby, who's not a baby, and I think he might be nodding off because his mother's talking, he's tuning out. My baby naming, all important life cycles, events that help me to solidify my Jewish identity. Now, when my children were younger, temple attendance was super important to me because, of course, I'm Jewish, they're Jewish, everybody's going to be Jewish, we're coming to the temple. And I needed to be an example to them. And I really wanted them to grow up Jewishly. I wanted them to see the world through Jewish eyes. I don't keep kosher, I didn't keep kosher, full disclosure, but we lit candles every Shabbat, or as many Shabbat as I could possibly remember. And we had Shabbat dinner together. We made blessings over the challah and the wine. They may not remember this, but I read somewhere in one of the prayer books that it's a good thing, it's a mitzvah to bless your children on Shabbat. So I used to bless them. Do you remember I blessed you on Shabbat? I did. I blessed them on Shabbat. And they were looking at me like, but I did. They didn't go much for it, so I didn't keep up with it for a long time. I think they thought it was corny, but I really loved it. I loved it. You blessed your children. What could be better? I have a piece in here that I don't know whether I was going to once they all decided to come. They don't go to synagogue much, but I said, I'm sure if I invited them, they would come. And I invited them, and they came. And I wasn't even sure with my youngest that he would come. And I said about him, and he's listening now, it would be a hill I'd literally have to die on to get him to attend. Well, I am alive, and he's here, and it's all good. 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 I do feel a little bit guilty sometimes when I don't participate in person, but I have to say, technology is wonderful, and when we had the Zoom services over Zoom, it was amazing. I think we watched more Shabbat services over Zoom than we came in person. This is not to tell you that Zoom is the way to go. In person is always the way to go. But it was such a wonderful way to be in community and to see everyone and to communicate with everyone. It was wonderful. And it's important for me to know that whenever I choose to attend, that I will be warmly welcomed and that hugs are never far behind. And I love singing portions of the service, like the Misha Berak. What a beautiful melody. Just absolutely awesome. Obligations to be an active Jew. I've served on the temple board. It was a great experience. Like I said, everything that was asked of me, I really did it. And when I was on the board, every single thing that I can remember that they asked me, I did it. And I think after 6 years, I was drained. Is that the amount of time one spends, 6 years? Thank you, Sherry. I was drained. I had nothing. Huh?
Until the next time.
I was drained. But the lessons I learned were invaluable. It was a time of serious decision-making. It was whether we would stay here in New Brunswick or we would look for somewhere else. I'm sure many of you remember that time. And there were pros and cons on every side, east and west and north and south. But here we are in New Brunswick, where we belong. We belong here. There's no question in my mind as to where we belong. And it was a time of much needed fundraising, membership drives, etc., etc. One may say that it's much the same now, just a different decade, right? I saw passion, leadership, commitment, and acts of great loving kindness, mitzvot, tikkun olam, tzedakah, etc., etc. I've been on the membership committee. Allison, you and I served on it. So many of us have served on it. Marvin was, I think, the chairman of the membership committee. Not Marvin, I'm sorry. Marvin, you were on the membership committee. You were. I started with you. Yes, yes, yes. And one of the reasons why, when I was chosen to be on the membership committee, I accepted it was because I thought we need to show some diversity in the temple. I did, and I said, if it's me, then my number's up. I'm going to be there, and it was also to show that Jews come in different shades. We come in different shades. I may be one, but there may be others out there like me, and I'm sure there are. I've met many of them. And the other thing is, I wanted people to look at me and see, you're welcomed here. It's a place where you can feel safe. I love the emphasis that we've placed on marginalized groups, our LGBTQ position, that we will be pushing more of this, and to ensure that this community knows this is a safe space for them. I like the way we, as Reformed Jews, think about the woman's right to choose. So important. Sometimes the wording gets mixed up, but Judaism informs me on that as well. I love the outreach to interfaith families. We talked about that. It's right here. I believe that no one, and we can put it, no one should be left behind. I know I didn't originate that. I think it's probably gotten from somewhere, but nobody should be left behind. And we as Jews, if we want to repair the world, the last thing we should be doing is to look at people and exclude them. We are the ones that should be bringing people in. Like Rabbi Miller says, the gates are open on Rosh Hashanah, but they're open all year long. 365 days a year when you walk into Anshe Emet. Falling short. Yes, as a Jew, I've fallen short. I've fallen short. Sent my kids to Hebrew school. I told them about this. I'm not sure if they liked it. And to be honest, I don't think they did. But they made friends and they finished Hebrew high school. I remember once, and I told my son that I was going to talk about this, I got a call from Bill Robinson. He was then the Hebrew school director. Yeah, the Hebrew school director. I got a call, and he says, just want to let you know that we've been watching Michael and a couple of other boys, and they would wait until the coast is clear, and then they would head off downtown into New Brunswick. But they're smart. Little Jewish boys are smart. They're very smart. They come back in time to be picked up. Yes, they did. And you know what? I told Ina, so Ina knew that I was going to talk, so the secret was out with Ina. Ina Horn's son, our former temple president, I think his name was Justin Weitzman, yes, was one of them. So even at that age, my son was in excellent company. If he was going to skip out of Hebrew school, he was going to skip out with someone's son who was going to be a former president of Anshe Amer. That's right. My son Jared was a special case. I had to bribe him to continue Hebrew school. I told him if he got bar mitzvahed, he would never have to put his foot in this temple ever again. Otherwise, he wasn't going to be bar mitzvahed. And then I promptly signed him up for Hebrew school. And he came. He didn't come much, but he came enough to finish, and so I'm proud of all of them. But I have to tell you that living every day as a black Jew, as a Jew of color, it presents challenges, and I would not be fair, and I would not give a full picture if I didn't talk about that. And I question myself, and I say, how do I make my voice heard when there is so much injustice against people of color? Who from that community would care about what I have to say when I lead with my Jewish identity? I think about the need to be authentic. And sometimes I really don't even know what that means because I've been so many things to so many different people. I question my Jewishness when I'm in a community of African Americans. When I return to my native Jamaica, some do not see me as authentic because I don't talk like them, even though I practice, I try. And they understand why, because Caribbean people have their own diaspora. We're everywhere. Colonialism was not so quickly forgotten. And I wonder if I tell them that I'm Jewish, will they accept me? They're very Christian. Mix of Protestants, evangelicals, etc. And I say, gosh, I've worked so hard to fit in. But I remember what Danny Siegel, I think Danny Siegel a rabbi? He came, he's not, but he came and he gave us a talk. He was like a scholar in residence or something for a weekend. Goes way back. And I went to a lot of his talkings and his teachings and what he said. And he and Rabbi Miller have a lot in common. And I remember they said, lead with love, concern, and empathy. And so I try. And is that Jewish enough? I hope so. And sometimes I think I have to defend my Judaism. And I think, am I a hypocrite? Did I sell out? My best friend, when I told her that I was converting, she said to me, why are you doing that? And I think I said, the good thing is, if I were being asked that same question today, my answer would be exactly the same. Because I want to. It's where I feel okay, and where I am spiritually, and it's where I want to be. And I wrote down, if that's not exactly what I said, it's exactly how I feel today. And I'm sure it's close enough to what I said back then. Sensitivity, my Jewish identity. Did I make someone else see that it's okay to choose to be a Jew of color? Or if you're born a Jew of color, you don't have to apologize, like my son, who has very little to do with Judaism, but he is a Jew. His father's a Jew and his mother's a Jew. You don't have to deny, explain, or justify your belief or how you see the world. I don't give much thought to those who look at me differently when they see me in Jewish places and events. That's totally their issue. Definitely not mine. And I'm borrowing something from my daughter. She always says at the end of when she says something like that, yours, you're not mine. Moving on, nothing to see here. Okay? My children come home for the holidays whenever they can. We're all in different places. But I typically make Pesach at home. I love that holiday. I love, love, love it. And I make a nice Seder table, too. I'm really proud of my Seder table. And I have cousins who, they have Rosh Hashanah, and we're invited every year. And when my children can come, they come. It's difficult, but we try to get together. The holidays are really important. And I think you talked about food. My cousins make the best kugel, have whitefish, salmon, the other delights. Jewish food, there's nothing like it. Although I have to say Caribbean food, it's okay too. It's okay too. It's okay too. The Torah to me is very complex. It's disturbing in a lot of the things it says. Multiple explanations and views on texts. Personally, I take in what makes sense to me. I'm happy that I don't have to be scholarly. Nothing against scholars. Have a brilliant scholar on the board. I don't have to be an intellectual. That's even better for me. I've never been one to be intellectual. My husband says I don't make sense half the time. I'm not logical. That's okay. I'm not Rambam, Maimonides, Rabbi Akiva, Rashi, none of those people. I practice lighting candles on holidays and all those things. What can I improve on? You know, it's Yom Kippur, it's Rosh Hashanah, it's a new year. I love that in Judaism, every year you get a redo. You don't actually get a redo. You actually get to think about what you've done wrong and to try to improve on what you want to do going forward. So every year I'm challenged to rethink living Jewishly and how to be a better Jew. And at the end of every year, I feel I always come up short. One thing I do know for sure is that my mother, a person who didn't know that she was training a future Jew, she comes up with a solid 10 every time. She sowed the seeds of mitzvot, tikkun olam, community, loving kindness, and doing deeds with a willing and a good heart. My rabbis, my teachers, my family, my Jewish friends and my community helped me to fashion my Jewish identity and to find my place in Judaism and to be comfortable in that space. In all honesty, I don't know if things / my life would be the same had I not met and been guided and tutored by Rabbi Miller and some of the great Jewish teachers on my journey to and through Judaism. And I think there's a saying that goes something like this, that when the student is ready, the teachers will appear. And I guess I was ready. I obtain so much pleasure when channeling the mitzvot my mother taught me and doing good deeds, and praying that I am an example in some small way of hope and acceptance to those on the sidelines who look like me to see themselves as totally whole and unapologetically valuable and belonging wherever they choose to go and whatever belief they choose to hold. Israel, I added this, Marvin, because I'm thinking a Jew, a Jewish homeland, Israel, has to be part of this whole thing of being Jewish and feeling Jewish. Yes, it's wonderful. It's a beautiful Jewish homeland. How could we not be more proud, considering our history? but I must remember the duality of my history as a black Jew. Otherwise, I'm not truly authentic. I visited Israel 3 times. Went there on my honeymoon. Who needs a tropical island when you've got Israel to go to on your honeymoon? Family occasions, weddings, bar mitzvahs, so memorable. And yes, the current political climate is troubling, but I pray for a solution that leaves its democracy intact and maintains the support it has from abroad. My children, last but not least, you've been mentioned, they're here to support me, and my husband, and I couldn't be happier. Wasn't sure they'd all come. They are a constant source of joy and have been among my greatest teachers, and I'm so eternally blessed and grateful. And I've learned a prayer that you say when things happen and it's a momentous occasion. And for me, this is kind of a momentous occasion, the Shehekianu. And I'd like to leave you with this. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehekianu, v'kiyamanu, v'higiyanu, lazman hazeh.
In light of the hour, I'm going to speak for our 4 speakers and say they're probably open to questions if you want to approach them individually and ask. I don't want to be in Rabbi Baisley's bad graces by delaying us any further. So, Shana Tova, everyone. Thank you so much for attending.